say as African women, but it's also nice to see, did we miss any mark and what is it that we can do about that? So we definitely achieved a lot just from hearing from who the UN Women and women's rights organizations in Africa and globally worked very closely with UN Women as, should I call it a sister organization, to ensure that gender equality agenda was at the center of the 2030 agenda, but also at the center of Africa Agenda 2063. It was through that kind of partnership that we're actually asking for the same things, we're pushing for the same things in different corners, that we're able to achieve what we achieved. We achieved Goal 5 on gender equality and empowerment of all women and girls everywhere. And the key mark here is every woman and every girl everywhere. Are we able to achieve that in 2030? We have a few years remaining. So I think we need to start running so we can reach where we need to reach. And really, like Hood already talked about the way this 2030 agenda is much more comprehensive, much more ambitious, much more transformative than what we had with the Millennium Development Goals. It is transformative because it actually looks at gender equality and addressing all the root causes of gender inequality. It looks at issues around women's ownership of property. It looks at issues of ending violence against women everywhere, which we didn't have in MDGs. It looks at issues of harmful traditional practices like FGM, ending child marriage. It looks at all those comprehensive things that are affecting women all across the globe, but specifically African women and girls. But also what has been achieved is the mainstream nature of the 2030 agenda. Often when we talk about gender equality within 2030 agenda, people rush to just say, oh, you have Goal 5. What are you doing about Goal 5? And we are here to say we are not just about Goal 5. We are for Goal 5. We advocated hard for it. But we are also for everything in that agenda, not just 17 goals, but everything in the agenda, which includes also the means of implementation. So, for example, financing for development, technology, data. We are all for that as women's rights organizations, as civil society organizations working on advancing gender equality and women's rights. And it is through ensuring that, that mainstream nature and the nature of comprehensiveness is maintained throughout the process of implementation. I think that's the only thing that will get us to achieving gender equality and women's rights. So I want to talk about how did we achieve that, because often we do think things just happened, but actually we worked very hard for this to happen, and I wanted to share just a few highlights on, at least from the African continent, but also collaborating with the global women's movement, the key strategies we used to ensure that we did achieve what we are able to achieve. So the first one that I really think was really key in terms of achieving what we were able to achieve, one was that we started early. Dr. Awino, who was welcoming here and who is the overall facilitator, was our first facilitator of the regional conference in Africa that we did in 2012 in Monrovia to really articulate our demands and building on what MDGs had been able to achieve, but also what they had been able to not achieve.
The minister does not have enough time with us. She is rushing for other very important events, but I also want to join the EU delegation, the ambassador, to thank you, Honorable Minister, that you had to take time off your busy schedule. She was actually supposed to be in a very important event where the president is launching a gender policy for the security organs, but she's here. She recognized that the women from Africa are here and that I have to join them. We thank you, Honorable Minister. Yes, your hands, please. We also want to thank, through you, Honorable Minister, the leadership of this country for allowing this conference to take place in Nairobi. We have always been coming to Nairobi. We don't face problems when coming to Nairobi. We thank you. We thank the government of Kenya for such leadership. Honorable Minister, I would really try to be very quick, but women always, have issues. I will try to put issues together, but still communicate to you as our minister, as the one who is representing all the governments, the 54 governments in Africa, so that the message goes across. Let me start, Honorable Minister, by saying, I always say this, what is not counted does not count. What is not counted does not count. Usually it is the women that are not counted. I start my speech like that. Some of the barriers, Honorable Minister, and constraints to equality and development that were there and recognized 21 years ago by the Beijing Platform for Action signatories are still in force globally. Say no if I'm lying. There are bright highlights where progress has been made, but no country can claim that has fully achieved gender equality across the globe. We must look beyond the averages to monitor the impacts and results of laws and policies for women and girls who experience multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination. Honorable Minister, the journey has been long, but the resolve will surely last stronger. The fact that we are here today, almost 2 years since the world adopted the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, and yes, we are the first women convening to deliberate on the goals, actually shows just how pivotal and varied our ambitions are, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, the immediate focus of our attention today is celebrating a decade of progress and building the agenda for safeguarding our gains. African women collective action on defining the pathway to achieve 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals and Africa.
The 30 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, adopted by our world leaders in 2015, is an ambitious blueprint for making our world more equitable, more sustainable, more livable, and I would say more enjoyable. The goals offer a real opportunity to drive lasting change for women's rights and equality, and to bring universal, comprehensive and transformative change in women and girls and men's lives. We can't afford to miss this opportunity. The central link between the Sustainable Development Goals and the Africa Vision 2063 is that both will only be achieved if gender equality and women's empowerment are prioritized. When women are brought on board and to the center to be part of the decisions that are made, we will see a change that will
convincingly and factually, and not by just lip service, the gender agenda in Kenya. Dear African sisters, I'm really honored and thrilled to be here with you in such a gender minority of one. Because the European Union that I represent in the Republic of Kenya is extremely pleased to co-sponsor this continental dialogue among African women's rights organization and civil society organization organized by FEMNET in the framework of the Africa-EU partnership. Recently, the European Council defined gender equality and women empowerment a precondition for development. This is, I think, a fundamental step. Whenever you look to the north, think of 500 million Europeans who are right behind you, supporting you so strongly. In addition, the promotion of gender equality, women's empowerment, and the enjoyment of human rights by women and girls are instrumental to achieving internationally agreed development goals such as the SDGs. Despite recent progress, women and girls continue to be the large majority of the world's poorest, to be unrepresented in government and decision-making bodies, and have fewer opportunities, lower pay than men in labor markets. In Europe, gender equality is a fundamental value of the European Union.
Join me, the Kenyan ladies, in moving a very special welcome to our guests from the rest of the continent who are here to attend this very important conference. To you, our guests from the continent and the rest of the world, let me move a very special welcome. Karibu Kenya. Wish you a very refreshing stay in this great city of Nairobi. And those of you visiting for the first time, make sure that you tour and get out of this hotel, see what the city has to offer, enjoy the warm hospitality and the Kenyan experience. Take time and visit with the National Park, which is 2-3 kilometers from where you are, the most unique feature of this great city. Let me come back today and appreciate FEMNET for having me today as your guest to this Pan-African Conference on Safeguarding Gains in Women Empowerment, a first of this kind. The conference takes place at a very opportune time within the political, the social, and economic contexts when the majority of African countries and governments are working at laying the building blocks to achieve the commitments made within Agenda 2030 and SDG and Africa Agenda 2063. This is a worthy event which will allow us to share experiences, to learn from each other, but importantly to input into the ongoing critical discourse. The voice of women, ladies and gentlemen, on gender equality and empowerment needs to be louder, bigger, sustained. So on this call, I laud you, FEMNET, for organizing this conference based on a collective platform of African women action towards these two agenda items. And I want to join my sister, the chair of FEMNET, in saying we cannot be loud enough in this room. We need our brothers, we need our sisters, we need our daughters and sons from the fourth estate to make it louder and sustained out there. It is only through cooperating and having a unified approach, such as what you've chosen within this continent, that can we truly achieve the Agenda 2030 as well as 63, and also safeguard the gains made so far in the area of gender equality and women empowerment. It is my trust that this conference accords us a platform to discuss the best ways and means to a collective continental approach to Africa's women empowerment. The multifaceted nature of the challenges facing women, which have been explained deeply by the chair, require a holistic approach. I urge you to be bold, I urge you to be candid, I urge you to be objective and honest in your deliberations in order to propose workable solutions and interventions to the respective African governments as they implement the Agenda 2030 and 2063. Your input is invaluable. And because I am here to represent my government, you allow me to share in depth what the Kenyan experience has been. I take note you have colleagues from this country who will also be here with you to share their experiences from their different sectors. But I will go from the government perspective. I start by noting that Kenya is on a sure and determined journey towards ensuring gender equality and women empowerment is realized. On our part, the government has put in place legal policy and institutional mechanisms to fast-track this. The Kenya Constitution of 2010 recognizes the importance of gender equality, and in which we have undertaken that no more than 2/3 of either gender should be in any one decision-making space, appointive or elective offices. It therefore means for us as a country, even as we walked towards 2030 and 2063, we had a constitution as the anchor for which we needed to start aligning our thoughts, our programs, our interventions, our policies, our laws towards. And so no wonder it was our own Ambassador Kamau, among the other experts, that breathed life into 2030. Enactment of the relevant legislation to bring life into this rule, we call it the 2/3 gender principle, which is anchored in the Constitution, here before my eyes. And so I called the police, the commanding officer, and I said, okay, you know me? Yes, I do. And Anna, why is that lady crying? Oh, she's been meeting, and what are you doing about it? And on, and the story went, and I said, lock whoever it is in, do what needs to be done, I'll be back on this matter. Immediately I finish with you. You know, because the more we can speak, we can see to begin with, the more we can want to take action, the more we can be active in taking action, the more the systems are going to be alert. Be it my good brothers who support the cause of women empowerment, like my brother from the EU, be it the members of FEMNET who are gentlemen who have just landed now, be it the police person who came and made a commitment that indeed they were going to take up the matter. So these continue. These issues continue. And it is for this reason, these last 2 weeks, I've occupied myself in saying, because I have witnessed a few cases of women offering themselves to run for political offices, and as soon as they make the pronouncement, they start getting intimidated by their male colleagues. I say stop. I say stop. Time has come that women should be supported to run for whichever office they elect to. It's been proved. Studies upon studies have proved that what our male colleagues, who we love, can do, women can do, and sometimes exceed. So stop. Allow our women be. Allow women to run for elective offices. Do not threaten them. Support them. Don't abuse them. Support them. Don't threaten them physically or verbally. Support them. This country, this continent, the globe needs women in leadership.